You're standing in line. But this isn't a theme park or a concert. This is a line on Mount Everest. You're in the death zone, 8,000 meters above sea level, and waiting for your turn at the Hillary Step. A jagged ledge barely wide enough for one person. And up here, every second costs you oxygen, warmth, and life. Just ahead, someone has stopped moving. At first you think he's just resting, but then you notice the way his head slumps, the stillness and the boots buried in snow. What you see is not a living climber, it's a warning. This is the story of Christoper Jon Kulish, a family man, a lawyer, a dreamer, a man who reached the top of the world and never came back. He didn't fall, he wasn't swept off by an avalanche. He died standing still, frozen in time, waiting in a line. Everest didn't kill him with storms or rockslides, it killed him with silence. Chris wasn't your typical headline chaser. He was 62, a Colorado attorney from Boulder, a careful climber with a quiet obsession, the 7 summits. He wasn't in it for records. He didn't want attention. He wanted to finish something that only a few thousand humans have ever done, climb the tallest mountain on every continent. He'd already stood on peaks like Kilimanjaro, Aconcagua, Denali, and Vinson. Just one mountain remained, Everest. In 2019, Chris joined a Nepali-led team for Everest's short window. He trained and he prepared, and in late May, as the jet stream shifted just enough to open the route, he made his push. His family supported him, and like any family, they worried. Everest is never guaranteed, especially not in a season packed with crowds. But Chris was calm, focused, and determined. On May 27, 2019, just after sunrise, Chris reached the summit of Everest. He stood at 8,848 meters, the highest point on Earth. The 7 summits were complete. The dream was done. Except, on Everest, climbers know that summiting is only half the story. Most deaths on the mountain happen during the descent. Because your oxygen is low, your body is shutting down, your mind is foggy, and you still have hours to go. Down steep ice, across knife-edged ridges, and through the very place you just barely survived. That season's descent led back toward the Hillary Step. Years earlier, the 2015 Nepal earthquake had changed that section, leaving climbers to rely even more on fixed lines. In 2019, a tight weather window funneled teams onto the same days. The result was predictable: bottlenecks on a ridge that wasn't built for waiting. A traffic jam formed at 28,000 feet. He wasn't the only one facing risk that week. As climbers stacked up near the choke points, others began to fade. Some ran low on bottled oxygen, others drifted in and out. It became a slow-motion collapse, scattered along the route. But unlike some, Chris moved through, tagged the top, and started down. That's the trap. The line doesn't need to take you right there. It can steal minutes you can't earn back and collect the debt later. That week, an image went viral. A single line of climbers stretching from the summit down to the step. Bodies stacked on a ridge no wider than a table. People standing in line in one of the most dangerous places on Earth. Some ran out of oxygen, some collapsed, and some never made it down. Here's what most people miss. Chris summited a few days after the most circulated photo of that line. Different morning, same pressure cooker dynamics. A narrow window. Crowds stacking at critical obstacles. Minutes vanishing in thin air. The picture became a symbol for the season, not a timestamp on every single tragedy. Chris climbed through that same world of delays. Maybe not in that exact frame, but in that same slow grind where time and cold eat at your margin. He reached the top anyway, because that's what committed climbers do. Then he turned around to pay the bill. Back at the South Col, Camp 4, the last fragile shelf before the drop to lower camps, Chris collapsed. Teammates and Sherpa guides tried to help. They gave him oxygen. They worked to revive him. For a moment there was hope, and then there wasn't. The altitude was winning. The cold was sinking in. And the mountain doesn't pause for anyone. Rescue above 8,000 meters is almost impossible. Your muscles are weak. Your lungs are burning. Even helping for too long can mean death. People do what they can, but at that height, physics and biology are not on your side. Other climbers passed, some unaware, others barely holding it together themselves. In the death zone, Survival comes first. It has to. That isn't selfish. That's the rule of Everest. Chris never made it beyond Camp 4. His team and family brought the news home. Friends remembered a measured man who finished what he started, a quiet life that ended on the world's loudest mountain without a sound. But his story didn't end there. His death helped focus a storm that had been building for years. News outlets blamed overcrowding. Permits were being handed out to too many teams, too many clients, and not enough margin. Everest, once a sacred challenge, looked more like a queue. That spring, multiple climbers died on Everest, not all from falls or storms. Many were worn down by exposure, delay, and the thin math of time and oxygen. Waiting became its own hazard. Camp 4 itself explains why. The South Col is a wind-scoured saddle where the air holds only a fraction of the oxygen your body expects. Even resting, your heart races. Tiny problems, dehydration, a leaky mask, a missed snack, grow fast in that environment. You don't have much room to fix anything once it starts going wrong. That's why climbers live by turnaround times. If a jam near the top pushes you past your cutoff, every extra minute is borrowed from the oxygen you'll need later. You can be smiling on the summit and already be in the red, committed to a descent with less air, less heat, and fewer options. Passing on fixed lines is technically possible but risky. To overtake, you have to unclip and reclip around other climbers on steep terrain when your hands are numb and your brain is slow. Most people won't attempt it when they're depleted, so the queue holds and the clock turns. And Sherpa strength, as heroic as it is, can't break physics. They fix ropes, ferry loads, and still try to help when things go sideways. But at that altitude, even rescuers are running near empty. The brutal truth is that aid above the South Col is limited by the same thin air that's hurting the person who needs it. For a brief moment, Everest was headline news. People were shocked. How could someone die in a line? It was supposed to be a mountain, not a traffic jam. But to veteran climbers, it wasn't shocking at all. Everest had been inching toward this for years. More people, tighter windows, slimmer margins. Chris's death was part of that pattern, not because he passed away in the line, but because the line reshaped everything around him. His family mourned. Those who knew him took comfort in the fact that he reached his goal. They also admitted a hard truth. When a mountain gets this crowded, the cost of a small delay multiplies for everyone. There's something deeply human about Chris's story. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't reckless. He just wanted to finish something he started. He believed in himself, trusted his partners, and gave everything to the mountain. That kind of steady dedication is rare. It's easy to judge from the outside, but in truth, Chris was like many of us. Someone trying to turn a lifelong promise into a moment of completion. And that promise collided with a system that no longer had room for mistakes. There's something uniquely chilling about his death. He didn't perish in a dramatic fall. He didn't vanish in a storm. He reached the top, came down to the high camp, and the lights went out. An ordinary end, in an extraordinary place. That's what makes it so unsettling, because anyone could think they're fine, until the mountain quietly says otherwise. Climbers say it's not just the altitude that gets you, it's the waiting. Every minute above 8,000 meters, your body is running on credit. Everest gives you a window, and if you spend too long in the red, it closes fast. Chris didn't fail because he was unprepared. He was caught in a season where time itself turned risky. Even the photo that defined that spring, the human traffic line near the top, tells the story. Not of drama, but delay. A place where dreams don't always end with a stumble. They fade with stillness. Chris's death reignited the debate. Should Everest have a climber cap? Should companies vet clients more strictly? Should there be tougher rules for timing and rescue? The mountain answers none of those questions. It just takes, and keeps taking. His family remembers him for a life well lived, a goal completed, and a final sunrise above the world. That's not nothing. That's everything he worked for. But his legacy is a cautionary tale, not just for climbers, but for anyone chasing a dream. Because sometimes the greatest danger isn't failure, it's success followed by stillness. It's believing the summit is the end. It's forgetting that coming down is where the real story begins. So next time you see a photo from Everest, look closer. Behind the flags and smiles, there are silent stories, frozen in the snow, waiting in line,